Good morning, everyone. We welcome you to our Sunday morning roundtable discussion. And this morning, after much prayer, we are recording at the North Star Cottage. This is our little church in the woods. After much prayer, it's in the secret place of the Most High. And we welcome you all. So glad you could join us this morning. It is Sunday, April 5th, 2020. And we will begin with our morning prayer. Florence, thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Eddy has given us so much, and these two short prayers from page 63 of the Blue Book, very pertinent for this time. The first one, prayer for yourself. I am the child of God. His care and love surround me. Animal magnetism cannot reach me to make me fear or be afraid. And this second one, I read last week, but pertinent today, the Christian Scientist prayer is what she calls it. There is no matter and no mortal mind. God is all in all. All is harmony, health, holiness. This is the prayer unceasing to be used on all occasions and at all times. It lays the axe at the root of unreality, materiality, that forbidden tree, and cuts it down. Preserve a sacred silence on this subject of prayer. Signed, Author of Science and Health.
It's beautiful. Thank you very much. Okay, and our watching point today.
Watch number 109. Watch lest you regard the attainment of spirituality as a purification of your own thinking rather than a receiving of wisdom from God. The purification of thought is the preparation, and this requires a certain amount of study. But study will not bring spirituality unless that which one learns is put into practice. Spirituality is reflection. It is what flows through the pipes after they are clean, rather than the effort to cleanse the pipes. Unquote.
Any comments on that?
I always love Gilbert Carpenter's analogy. So
Yes.
It makes sense.
Clean the pipes.
Yeah, this is keeping our slate clean.
Mrs. Evans used to like to use the analogy that, preparing our thought is like tuning the violin. But that's not the objective. The objective is to play the thing. And it is in the playing of the violin that you become a musician.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good description of this. Yes. So yes, we need the prayer, the study, but then we are to be living this truth, demonstrating it. That's what it's all about. So our subject today is unreality. It's a beautiful lesson. Gary wrote it. It couldn't be more perfect for this time. And Bruce, you want to read the golden text?
From 2 Corinthians. God, who commanded the light to shine out of darkness, hath shined in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ.
Thank you. And it's been said, Christian Science is the light. It's a light that's shining in the darkness. And we have to keep that light bright in our own lives. If we do that, it will shine brightly. And where there's light, the darkness cannot come. It's impossible. So then, our responsive reading, Carol.
From Psalms. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation, there shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways.
We have been having a lot of the 91st Psalm, and this is the reminder to be working with this every day. It is a total shield and a total protection. And Roy sent us, well, it's attributed to Mary Baker Eddy, a little bit of a scientific interpretation of it, and we have it on the website, and it's beautiful. I love, he shall cover me with his feathers, omnipresence, and under his wings, omnipotence, shall I trust. His omniscience shall be my shield and buckler, defense. So there we are, and we know, Mrs. Eddy said, in dealing with contagion, we are to work with those three things, the allness of God. God is all, there can be nothing else. And then, too, I like this, nor for the pestilence, which Mrs. Eddy says, mental contagion that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. Some of you have said, especially at night, you have trouble stopping the conversation of error going on. Well, here it is. Nor for the pestilence, mental contagion, walketh in darkness. So God is your defense, even then, when you are dwelling in the secret place of the Most High. And then it makes quite clear, because I have made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, my habitation, there shall no evil befall me, neither shall any plague in harmony come nigh my dwelling. Now, we do, and I do too, we often quote the second part of that, no evil befall thee, no plague come nigh thy dwelling, but there's a prerequisite. And what is that?
Because thou hast made the Lord, which even the Most High, thy habitation.
Yes. You've made God your refuge and your habitation, your dwelling there. That you must do. You can't claim the second part without knowing and claiming the first part.
Without doing the first part. This is not a passive thing. I cringe when I used to hear Christian scientists say, well, God is all, therefore he's doing the work. And then they stop there. You can't stop there. Error is aggressive. So we have to be aggressive in our declarations of the truth. We have to be aggressive because we have to have no doubt in our consciousness that the truth is true. That is what it means to dwell in the house of the Lord. That is what it means to make God your habitation.
It ties in with the daily watch, doesn't it? When they say that, you can't just read and then that's it, which is what I used to do years ago, and I've heard other people do the same. You have to use it continually, always knowing God, my home, God, my guide.
Yeah,
everything.
no, and we all, I'm sure we all have been there. We're used to think, well, reading and getting my thought right is, all I have to do. Bill Parent, one of our former readers, used to say, well, he used to do his.
No, that was Tom.
It was somebody. Somebody used to say he used to read his lesson in the morning and and then leave it in his study, and then go to work and deal with all this stuff.
and worry.
Worry about it all.
So,
But no, pray unceasingly. This is not a light, this is not optional. Pray unceasingly.
and you can't claim the benefits of the second part without truly doing the first part, which leads me into what Parthens wrote on the forum about. Then said Jesus to those Jews which believed on him, if ye continue in my word, then are ye my disciples indeed, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Now, I know I've quoted the second part of that very often, but he makes the very, very good point that the first part, are you doing this? Are you continuing in Christ Jesus' word? And then, are you his disciple? Are you his disciple? All of you, I was thinking during the night that I could probably list very many of you as practitioners in our booklet. Maybe I will at some point, or maybe we will at some point. You all should be doing this work, healing, being a disciple of Christ Jesus. And if you're not, why not? And if you think you can't, why? We have to. We really aren't given an option. This is what we do. This is what we are about. And whether you're listed or not is immaterial. You should be doing it. Wherever you are, you should be practitioners for this truth. Healing those, first healing yourself, then healing those you come in contact with, and then healing the world.
And this is not an unusual thing. This is not something out of the ordinary that we're being asked to do. This is what God created us to do. This is what is normal and natural. Regardless of what your business is, regardless of what your place in life is, we are called to practice the science, because it's the only thing that's true anyway. And Mrs. Eddy says in our textbook, businessmen and scholars have found that practicing Christian Science makes them better at what they do. And that's a byproduct of living the science. The first requirement is to live the science that Jesus taught and practiced, that Mrs. Eddy rediscovered and gave in our textbook, as Jesus prophesied would happen, the Comforter.
Jeremy, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say about being active and all that. Watching point number 496, the one that talks about being a terror to error, he says that we need to be aggressors, not mere defenders of the faith. And that I think of that a lot. That we gotta get out there, and we have to make sure that error is always too late.
Thank you.
And also, when he said that that's our reason for existing, that prayer in Blue Book.
Thank you. Yes. It's our reason to exist. And until we realize that, our existence probably isn't going to be very good, is it? Now,
Empty for a while, for the most
Yeah.
part.
yes. All right. Anyone else? So don't claim the second part without remembering what the first part is. What's required of you. And it gets to be a point, you call a practitioner, you want help. But if you haven't been doing the first part, honey, it's just not going to work. It would be unprincipled for it to work. Maybe if you're new in this science and you don't know anything about it, that's very different. But when you've been walking this walk and talking this talk, the first part is required. And it's the living of the 10 Commandments, the Sermon on the Mount. You can't be pulling God's chain and screaming, I want the loaves and fishes, when you're hating your brother and other things. So, Gary, you read 2 in the Bible.
Psalm 46. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swelling thereof. There is a river, the streams whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacles of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early.
Is that not what is going on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's exactly what's going on. Now, again, one night when I was up, feeling concerned, all the small businesses, people suffering, and I got clearly, and it isn't in the lesson, but it's part of this Psalm 46. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Now, be still. It came so strongly to stop thinking and worrying and peeking out the window at the storm raging outside. And I certainly don't listen to the nameless nothing talk, but just the concerns for the people now, to just stop it. Focus on me. Focus on who and what I am. Get into your omniscience, omnipresence, omnipotence, as we talked about. Focus on that, and I will take care of the rest. This is the absolute higher metaphysics that needs to be done. I guess in Mrs. Eddy's home at one time, I believe it was 48 hours, the watchers were not even allowed to take their clothes off. They had to continue watching. And they claim they didn't even know what they were watching for. We are being called on now. This today is a very sobering day to me. It's been sobering. What is today? What is it called the week before Easter?
Palm Sunday.
And what happened on Palm Sunday?
When Jesus came into the town riding on a mule, and the people in their elated emotion laid down all the palms in front of him. They were so happy to see him. Maybe little did they know that this was all the introduction leading up to the crucifixion, the sobering events leading up to the crucifixion.
Yes. Shardy and Linda found something in Watches, Prayers, and Arguments. In my book, it's on 103. And it was interesting because the date is April 5th when Mrs. Eddy wrote this, 1909, April 5th, which is today.
Yeah.
She says, my beloved board, you know that God divine love reigns, and the Catholic prayers this week, Holy Week, or any week, to harm your leader are powerless. Will you, as my church, realize this truth that destroys error? Do not take me up personally. You know mentally and prayerfully that the Catholic prayers to harm anyone are utterly powerless. Evil and sin are nothing. Good and divine love are infinite, and there is no other power. They are all and govern all. Now, whatever Antichrist prayers you want to call, we'll impersonalize it. It can come in many, many ways. Mrs. Evans used to suffer quite a bit during this week because the Antichrist is in full bloom. It is screaming, you're born into matter, you're going to die out of matter, and the crucifixion is symbolized everywhere. And if you are a working Christian Scientist, you are going to feel this. And I find it interesting that right now, I know in New York and other major cities, they are saying this nameless nothing is going to be at its worst, screaming its loudest. Isn't that interesting? The week before Easter.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is it saying? It's saying materia medica. I am great. I've got the answers. You do this, you do that. I'm going to have a worldwide vaccine and everyone's going to have to take it in order even to go to work, because that's what they're saying. And then the economy. Look what you're doing to me. I'm being destroyed. We can't go on anymore without jobs. The system of this world. Many, and I bless all of these people, institutions, perhaps not institutions, but people. The churches too, where they have some concept of the Christ, and many are standing, but many do not know about the healing power. And I will quote from Science and Health. Gary read this a few weeks ago on Wednesday evening. The ancient Christians were healers. Why has this element of Christianity been lost? Because our systems of religion are governed more or less by our systems of medicine. The first idolatry was faith in matter. The schools have rendered faith in drugs the fashion rather than faith in deity. By trusting matter to destroy its own discord, health and harmony have been sacrificed. Such systems are barren of the vitality of spiritual power, by which material sense is made the servant of science, and religion becomes Christ-like. She said that during her day. It is even more so now, isn't it? So we're seeing whatever systems are saying that they're the greatest, worship me, bow down to me, and Lord knows we have been, they'll all fail. I mean, what is this Psalm 46 saying? But we will not fear though the earth be removed. And then, go ahead, Florence.
No, I was led to something this morning in the first series of We Knew Mary Baker Eddy. And she says that through the discovery of Christian Science, God is today proclaiming his own government of the universe. And in resistance to this sublime government, we hear one human voice after another crying, quote, "No, I shall rule the world." This clamor will cease, and out of the fire shall emerge a purified consciousness, more ready to learn the way to live.
Thank you. And that is the exact purpose of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's a purging and a cleansing.
Yeah.
In Ray's forum, where she, and others have mentioned this too, but she wrote about it very beautifully, about what is the definition of corona? I mean, I learned this in school in earth science.
I think it's a crown.
Crown, it's a halo around the sun. Right? The halo around the sun. Mm-hmm. And Mrs. Eddy, her definition of sun, the symbol of soul governing man, of truth, life, and love. So that speaks of the promise. Corona, the true sense of the nameless nothing, will bring God, government of God. Who else? Was someone else trying to speak?
I was thinking that what Mrs. Roberts just talked about was that there's many people in materia medica and religion that really mean well. So it's the thought behind those that's being used to even corrupt those that mean to do well.
Thank you very much.
Well, and it's not the people, it's the systems that they believe in, isn't it? And even
right, that's the animal magnetism that's using them as a channel. That's correct.
Correct. And animal magnetism ultimately is nothing more than ignorance manifest, but it's ignorance. And the prayer that Mary read earlier, written by Mrs. Eddy to the board on April 5th, the prayers against her are still going on. The prayers against the Christ are still going on. Those prayers have infiltrated the organization in Boston and have tried to humanize Mrs. Eddy and humanize the science. That is the attack. And it's not people, it's impersonal evil attacking the Christ consciousness. And of course, it's trying today. It takes different forms, but it's still trying. And that's why we have to see that this is God working his purpose out. God is purifying us. The truth is marching on. And anything that gets in the way of the truth has to be eliminated. Though the earth be removed, though our earthly treasures be removed from us, well, it may appear to be traumatic, but it's a good thing.
It certainly has been necessary. We couldn't go on the way we've been going. I mean, we were just so rushing. Where were we all rushing to? And also becoming more and more secular and getting more and more worshiping the false gods. Now, also on the website, I put an extract from a letter that I turned to by Mrs. Eddy. The churches and the students must be secondary to the example of Jesus. And if he were here personally to call upon his students, watch with me. Had they watched with him 1 hour or 1 year, and so save losing him, you can see where the history of Christianity would be today, and how many years it will take to recover that lost opportunity. Demonstration, healing the sick, and helping your leader is needed more than all things else at this date. Unspoken influences are mentally at work to keep you and all my students from doing either of these duties aforenamed. I want this hour to be a sobering one. We have a window of opportunity here to change the course of history as Christian scientists. And yes, we want the government of God and everything, and that will be quite wonderful. And that's certainly our aim. And in truth, it is here, right now. We have to have the eyes to see it. But Mrs. Eddy, in her quote, unauthorized literature, spoke many, many sobering words, including what I just read to you. I was grateful because Anne in England sent me an email saying she was grateful that this was on our website and that she knew what happened about Mrs. Eddy. What happened? What did she say if she was ever removed from Pleasantville? What did she say would happen?
She would be mentally murdered?
Yes. And at Chestnut Hill, she did not live too long, did she? In human.
Just 2 years or so.
3 years, yes. Now the same thing, if she had been supported, if she had been recognized as the woman in the apocalypse, if her rightful place had been supported, it would have advanced science to a much greater point. And is Jonathan on?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's the first part of it is she was asked.
I'm here, Mary.
Thank you, Jonathan. What would happen to the Christian Science movement if you passed on? Do you know what her answer was?
It would digress into material prosperity.
Thank you. And then give us a second question and answer.
The second question was, what would happen if
Mrs. Eddy, you were supported through this time, and rather than dying and leaving a body, you were to ascend. And her response was that the Mother Church would dissolve.
The organization?
The organization. I believe the exact wording is the Mother Church would dissolve. It's in Paul Smiley's book.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, this is what we know, and this is what we have come upon, actually almost stumbled upon, these truths. She intended for this organization to dissolve because she knew, as we talked about last week, if it just continues as a big human organization, it does digress to ecclesiastical despotism, and it loses its science, its healing power. Why did she start the church in the first place? What were her words? And it's even in the manual. To establish what?
Primitive Christian Science.
Primitive Christianity.
Christianity, I'm sorry, you're right.
Primitive Christianity. This is what we are all about. It's partially why I recommended to most of you to watch the show, The Chosen, because it shows everybody going around healing and the truth that was going on during the Roman Empire, one of the worst times of all. Primitive Christianity, not all this ecclesiastical despotism and rules and all of this other stuff. Primitive. Now, Florence, what did Mrs. Eddy give us in, is it 6 Days of Revelation, when she said, if materia medica...
She said that there will come a time when materia medica becomes so organized, is the word she used, that I guess it's right now how everybody's looking to that. And when that time comes, nothing suffices except for science and health. So.
Thank you very much. Science and health, getting that word out, which is what, our website is about. And, at the Bible study last week, Zari said, let's all spend time just reading the textbook, because she knew the textbook would do the leavening work. So you see, we've been given this, and it's a sobering opportunity this time for us to work. Now, I know, maybe some of you are cleaning your closets or whatever else, and that's fine. But you make sure you devote time. Mrs. Eddy had said even before, early on, she said to spend 4 hours a day in the truth. Most people don't have time to do it. Now you do.
I also think that because science and health, what God has given her for the world is what will change things. It's why she, as the scribe who brought it, is to be recognized in her right place. She says in the same page that I read, page 40 of the first series of We Knew Mary Baker Eddy, she says, in a letter written in 1899, our leader wrote, all that people need in order to love and adopt Christian Science is the true sense of its founder. In proportion as they have it, will our cause advance. So I think we can include in our watches, every individual watches every day, the receptivity of science and health. People are ready for it, and also the truth about who Mrs. Eddy really is.
Thank you very much. Just this knowing and doing this work will change, because, she had a form of crucifixion. And many people say that she did ascend. And, I could believe that, absolutely. They felt they saw her afterwards. And of course, we know there is no death, so there's nothing too odd about that, to know that truth. And I used to wonder, and this was a while ago, well, all this attack on our leaders, and I thought, well, she's not here anymore, so, but that, as Gary said, that attack goes on. And who knows how many thumbs down I'll get after this, after this roundtable. So, but that's okay because this is a radical science, and it has to be. We have to do this work, and we have this time to do it. And if we do it, and we should do it because we're way advanced, even from the time Mrs. Eddy was around, we should be advanced in this truth. We can change this course of history. We can certainly lessen what's going on to a great degree. And I was told, Parthens, who keeps up on this, said that what they had projected, this nameless nothing was going to do, it's much milder than what they projected. And he attributed it to the work going on here. So we can just, let's calm it down, certainly vanquish it, but let's not know, or let's make sure we know we can change the results by this work. The economy does not have to collapse. People do not have to be having such a terrible time with it. So, any comments before I go on?
Yeah, I think what Mrs. Eddy gave also from page 60 of the Blue Book will help with this, the financial aspect of all this, where she says that love is all powerful, love is all seeing, love is ever present, thy kingdom has come. Thy will is done here on earth as it is in heaven, and earth is heaven. This is that piece she gave to her students to put in their pocketbooks. So it can be for us too. It points all to God still.
Yes, and that was what Sharon put in her pocketbook, and she never lacked. Well, and it's time that we do learn a more radical sense of our supply and of our health. It's time that we trust more in God as a source of all good. Also in the 6 days of Revelation, she says, you don't think you go to church to worship God, do you? As we used to think and do. Our God isn't to be worshipped, but expressed. And then when Christian scientists learn to live together, there will be no need for churches.
And Mrs. Eddy also, the importance of recognizing her for who she truly was that originally she resisted forming a church. But the problem was that whenever somebody was healed, like coming to one of her talks or whatever, or in person, they always went back to their churches and back to the old theology. So she found that she had to form something to keep them from going backwards. And the other thing is that as Christ is here today, so is Mrs. Eddy, because she says, as you're talking about science and health, we find her in her writings. And she's very much in evidence with all the writings she's left behind.
She certainly is. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, and in addition to that, she did approach many of the other churches with the science and offered it to them. And what was their response to her?
It was rejected.
So she knew what these people were going back to after they had been healed and then went back to their churches. She knew the resistance that they were going back to. And it was very reluctantly, but out of great compassion for mankind that she established the church in the first place.
Thank God she did.
Well, we can thank, yeah, exactly. And thank Mrs. Eddy that she did. Because it was not an easy task.
I read in that 6 days of Revelation, I didn't know this, but she had been, they had built the Concord Church, and it was almost like, well, thanks a lot. I've got enough to do working for the mother church. Now you've given me a new church within my proximity to be working for. So she knew the work that's needed. There's a huge amount. This is why we watch. This church doesn't just exist. We just don't go in and put ourselves down and hope for the best.
Twice a week.
twice a week. There is a huge amount of work that goes on all week to give what is given here. And most of you who are listening are part of it in one way or the other, in your testimony, certainly in your prayers and in your watching. Mrs. Evans established years ago to have a watch on Tuesday nights and Saturday nights to be supporting the service, the upcoming service, because she knew the opposition to it, especially the reading of Science and Health. It has to be protected. This isn't just some light thing we're doing. And that's why we have been able to forge through all these years, the only way we've been able to do it. Parthens had an interesting dream. He said that he dreamed he was with Christ Jesus, and all around him were these huge, huge Santa Claus bags. You know, those Santa Claus bags that presents come in, or these bags had cards in them, like, you know, children writing what they want from Santa Claus. So when they started looking at the cards, all the cards said, "Hi, Jesus, having a great time, miss you, love you." Thousands of these cards saying that. Do you understand what was behind his dream?
So what was the dream all about? Anybody know?
How everything has become so secular, people have turned from God, and it's time to turn back now.
Thank you.
People became content with their materiality because it hadn't thoroughly blown up in their face yet.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a very important point. This is what we were just talking about. It will digress into material prosperity, which it has. So, hey, I'm having a great time, Jesus. Think about you every once in a while. Everything's great. Because it hadn't blown up in its face again. And this is what the Carpenter books talk about over and over and over again. Christian Science isn't here to make your lives humanly comfortable. It will do that. But you better not stop there. It's to get rid of this whole sense of material existence. And this is what is so radical about it and why people can run from it. Because it will blow up in your face. It has over and over and over, hasn't it? Just look. That's why I like history. That's why I like the Bible. It tells you these things. It's not the objective, is not to make yourself humanly comfortable. And this is so important let's see if I can find it.
If I could just add, this
Sure,
also
please.
goes along with Christian Science healing. Mrs. Eddy said they are formidable and that they are calls to higher duty, not discharge from care.
Thank you.
Christian healing is that.
Thank you. And we're going to read in retrospection, introspection again, Faith Cure, and where everyone is wanting the great healings, the quick healings. And yeah, Jesus did do that. It is often asked, why are faith cures sometimes more speedy than some of the cures wrought through Christian scientists? Because faith is belief and not understanding, and it is easier to believe than to understand spiritual truth. It demands less cross-bearing, self-renunciation, and divine science to admit the claims of the corporeal senses and appeal to God for relief through a humanized conception of his power than to deny these claims and learn the divine way, drinking Jesus' cup, being baptized with his baptism, gaining the end through persecution and purity. Millions are believing in God or good without bearing the fruits of goodness. Are you one of them? Not having reached its science, belief is virtually blindness when it admits truth without understanding it. There is danger in this mental state called belief, for if truth is admitted but not understood, it may be lost. The work of healing in the science of mind is the most sacred and salutary power which can be wielded. My Christian students, impressed with the true sense of the great work before them, enter this straight and narrow path and work conscientiously. Let us follow the example of Jesus, the master metaphysician, and gain sufficient knowledge of error to destroy it with truth. This is something people don't want to do, which is what I'm giving you today, to have the sufficient knowledge of error in order to destroy the truth, destroy it with the truth. Mrs. Eddy said she labored 40 years handling animal magnetism. Now you must do the same. You can't just skip over to the,
The
nice part and everything's wonderful. This has to be done. This is what separates us from New Age and a lot of other things. The cross bearing, and you don't get the results you want because you back off from this. I backed off from it big time. I didn't want it either. Who? But then you get forced to, which is many people are getting forced to today. Then she says, this brings out the nothingness of evil and the eternal somethingness, vindicates the divine principle, and improves the race of Adam. Now, that's the difference between real Christian Science, healing, true healing, and the bogus sense. And in 6 Days of Revelation, she saw a lot of this bogus sense, the faith cure going on in Christian Science. It's so much deeper and more. And when you get that, you are raised up. This is a spiritualization of thought that raises you way up, and everything in your life changes. The change of base, you have a change of base. It's no longer based on material ways and means and human comfort or human anything. Far beyond that. And it gives you the unspeakable. Go ahead, Florence.
Yeah, I think this is why it's significant that Christ Jesus, even after his ready healings, also instructed, maybe some of them it says, go and sin no more. So he did want the continuation of spiritualization of thought, even that.
Yes, he did. He did. And this is in the lesson, it says, for he had healed many, insomuch that they pressed upon him for to touch him, as many as had plagues. Now, Mike, did you want to say something?
What happened was that in Concord, when James Gilman was making the plates for Christ and Christmas, Mrs. Eddy told him not to go to church in Concord. And evidently the people there were jealous because James Gilman spent so much time with her that they were jealous of him. She also told him when he was done with the project that he should go live elsewhere.
And, the students in Mrs. Eddy's home, they didn't go to church at all. They were too busy working. And I'm not saying, because at this point I think we all need what we're doing here, but just to go and take and no, it's not what it's about. This is to make you all, and you all already should be, disciples of Christ Jesus, disciples of Mary Baker Eddy. Now, Shardy, what did you say about having done all to stand?
Well, you put your armor on. And it says then, that's Ephesians. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand the evil day, and having done all, to stand. And when I first came to this church, we were going through all the books and organizing, and I found this, it's like a prayer, and it was not, it said unknown, and it says, we must stand. Now, basically, I won't read the whole thing. You have to get still and put your armor on. You have to get to that place of peace like Christ gave, and then you can possess what is ours, the possession of God and what he gives, because it's God who gives and we receive.
Thank you. And, it's easy to start grinding out treatments and keep grinding and grinding. That's not what a treatment is. You state the truths. This is not what a watch is either. You state the truth. You know it to be effective, and then you stand with it and you let God work. Because remember, it's not you doing it. It's always God. Having done all to stand. When you feel you've done everything you know in a given situation, to heal it, to pray for it, whatever, however it's coming to, when you have done all you know, then you stand with that truth. And don't waver. Don't start doubting yourself. Stand with that truth. Know it's in operation, because it is. It would have to be.
It just reminded me of Mrs. Eddy saying, I think it's in Watch's Prayers and Arguments, that not to mar her success. The last battle is always the hardest.
Thank you. And Joanne spoke, and this is very true. Is she on now or no? Well, when we come to have more faith in truth, in the truth of being, then we have an error. More faith in spirit than in matter. More faith in living than in dying. More faith in God than in man. Then no material suppositions can prevent us from healing the sick and destroying error. So today, with all of this stuff raging around us, where is your faith? Where are you? Do you have more faith in God than in man? In living than in dying? Please, this is a good checking point for you, for all of us. Where do you stand? Are you going to believe these lies? All of them, whether they claim to be materia medica, the economy. It's all ultimately, remember, it's all the Adam dream. It's all an illusion. And that's where we wield the power, knowing we cannot be mesmerized by these pictures. And it is an awakening process. I thought in the article Invasion, which we put up on the website, say many times to yourself, where God is, I am, and where I am is the power of God. And where the power of God is, there is no other power. You just take that one thought and work with that. Ding, ding, ding. Thank you. I was wondering about that. Our bell is ringing. I was hoping someone was going to do that. Thank you, Sharon. Okay, we're going to end on this article. I want everyone working with this about materia medica from Watch's Prayers and Arguments.
There is no power, intelligence, or principle, mesmeric or hypnotic, in materia medica, as individual or collective mind. Therefore, it cannot bind nor hypnotize mortals through human beliefs or willpower from seeking the true healing as it is in Christ Jesus and Christian science. There is but one physician, because there is but one mind, whose medicine is truth, which destroys all error, whose attraction is love, which casteth out all fear. This is the one mind, which was also in Christ Jesus. And this mind alone can draw all men unto him, divine love. Materia medica cannot hide under the guise of hygiene, witchcraft, magic, spiritualism, mind cure, faith cure, or any other subtle form of carnality. For to be carnally minded is death. Man, I, cannot be bewitched or mesmerized by alluring or high-sounding phrases or methods, nor by any personality, individual or collective, which substitutes matter and materia medica for the healing power of truth, Christ. The nothingness and omnipotence of materia medica is demonstrated through divine science the nothingness and impotence of materia medica is demonstrated through divine science by its loyal students, who reflect divine intelligence. which destroys any claim of intelligence not in God, good, divine mind. To enmity's own hell of ignorance, superstition, hypocrisy, and hatred, justice consigns the lie, which would slay man in order to satisfy its own beliefs in materia medica and false theology. God made man immortal, and in his image, the image of his own eternity, and to this end gave him dominion over all the earth, over all the works of his hands. This is the truth of being, and nothing can change the truth into a lie. Nothing can wrest man out of God's hand, for it is he who hath made us, and not we ourselves, and hath given us life everlasting. Therefore, health, harmony, and immortality are the everlasting facts of being. It is so.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.